Hey guys, it's Cece, and today I would like to do a discussion slash rant about a book that I recently read. So I kind of want to discuss Queen of Shadows by Sarah J. Maas. I didn't read this book until this month because I have been abroad and didn't have it with me, but now I've read it, and now I'd like to talk about it because I had some serious issues with Queen of Shadows. So, since I had so many great things to say about Heir of Fire and the character development that happened in Heir of Fire, I kind of want to start with talking about the character development in Queen of Shadows because that is where most of my problems with this book were. So before we go any farther, I just want to say this is going to be full of spoilers for Queen of Shadows. So if you haven't read the book and you would like to, then you should just leave now because this is going to be full of spoilers. I'm going to spoil everything in the book. Okay? Leave now. Go. Get out of here. Go. Okay, if you're still here, that means that you don't care about spoilers. So we can start by talking about Selena's character development, or I guess I should call her Aelin now, because apparently those are two very different people. So one of my main problems with this book was that I did not like how Aelin has become a different character. And a lot of people defend this by saying that they are two different people and Selena was just an act. I don't know, that just is so sloppy to me to just say, well, my character from the first two books is a totally different person from this character in the last two. And the only way I'm going to explain it is to say that they're two completely different people, but they aren't! I know that they're different and that Aelin has all of these responsibilities, but Selena was Selena for so many years of her life. Even if she knew in the back of her head that she was Aelin, she always knew she was still Selena for a number of years, and while some of it might have been an act, that is how she was raised. That's who she was, that's who she became. So to just show up and say that it was all nothing and that she's a totally different character now because she's embraced the fact that she's Aelin, it just feels so sloppy and inconsistent with Aelin as a character. I just don't understand, because I really liked Selena. That's one of the things I loved about the beginning books, was that I thought Selena was so interesting. She was this girl who was really she was intense, she was a badass, she would kill people and have no qualms about it, but she also loved to read and she loved dresses, and I loved that. It was such an interesting character. And then we get to Queen of Shadows and she had sort of the shadows of these character traits that really defined her, but she was a totally different person. Also, by her changing, what was the deal with her and Chaol? I mean, I get that she's really frustrated at Chaol, but I feel like throughout the duration of this book, Aelin just picked Chaol up and continued to throw him in a heaping pile of trash. And it was so frustrating, because Chaol, whether or not she wants to admit it, was a very important part of her life. It was a very important relationship to her. It was sort of her first, and it was her first serious relationship since Sam, which is obviously going to be a very big deal. And yet, when she comes back, she just completely discounts everything she learned from him. She says that all of it was meaningless, it was nothing that happened, and that was so frustrating, because obviously Chaol's important to her, and Chaol and Dorian as characters were really important in building a new Selena who's just more invested in having friends, and I feel like that was thrown away. Okay, so now we can talk about Chaol. I feel like in this book, it wasn't just Selena who was a new person. Chaol was a new person too. I understand it a bit more with Chaol. He had been like, everything that he'd been has completely changed and shifted, but I don't understand. The consistent anger going between him and Selena was so difficult to read because I mostly blamed Aelin for it. I was so frustrated with her because so many things with Chaol were obviously different, and she just completely discounted it because she had new men to have around instead. That I feel like really replaced Chaol, and I don't understand why, because she obviously had a connection with Chaol, and then she just kind of threw him away repeatedly. And it was so annoying because, I mean, even all the way up through Heir of Fire, I really did believe that Selena and Chaol were going to be a thing, and I will continue. I'll continue to believe that because I will get to this later. The Rowan Aelin nonsense. Anyway, I fully believed that they would get together because they just have so many elements that match each other. Yes, they're both really hard-headed, and I can see them in the future having these huge arguments, but Kale's sense of doing right and Aylin's sort of crazy avenging spirit thing, it balances the other out. They balance each other out, and it was so annoying to see nothing done with him and to see nothing between them. It made no sense. It was so annoying. And the last thing that I want to talk about Kale, because my biggest issue with this book, besides just character development in general, was how all of this character development led to these different nonsensical relationships, and one of the big ones was Kale and Nesrin. So, if Kale and Nesrin had been given maybe a bit of time to develop, I could have possibly given some time come around to it. But there is this thing in YA novels that really, really bothers me, where as soon as a person is out of a relationship for like 2 weeks, they're a sad, pathetic loser who was never going to find love again, which is ridiculous. So the only solution to that, obviously, is to shove Kale into a relationship with the nearest woman. That's really how it felt to me. I didn't feel like chemistry between them. I didn't think it was going to be a thing. Yes, they have like a history together, but that was mentioned so in passing, and the way they interacted, I really assumed that that meant there was going to be a friendship built off of that, and it just wasn't. And the end, when they like actually were together, honestly repelled me. I was so against it. It made no sense in my opinion. I feel like it came out of nowhere, and it was just so that Kale wasn't a sad sack because Aylin had found some new fae meat. I was furious about this relationship. And to be honest, that relationship actually pissed me off more than Rowan and Aylin did. And I will talk about Rowan and Aylin because no. So I guess to talk about this, my number one requirement going into Queen of Shadows, I was talking about it to Janelle, and I said my one rule with Queen of Shadows, it could do anything it wanted. It could kill anyone off that it wanted to, but as soon as it broke up the fantastic friendship from Heir of Fire and turned it into a relationship, that would be it for me. That would be the point that I was like, no, you've ruined something beautiful, and I'm absolutely furious about it. And guess what happened in this book? So my main reason for hating this ship is, first of all, why is it unacceptable to have heterosexual friendships? Why? Why? Every single man that Selena meets immediately wants to bang her, and I don't know, like, I love the female friendships in this book, but I don't understand why all of her male friendships have to, in some way, lead to sex and to a relationship. Duh! And the other reason it really bothered me was because Rowan became a completely new person, and this relationship came out of nowhere. Rowan was like a great friend figure and a great just person in general that Aylin could finally confide in. She had somebody who wouldn't judge her for these things. And then as soon as Rowan shows up, he showed up, and he was this weird, territorial asshole who was constantly fighting Aedion, and it bothered me so much, because the whole point was that he gave Aylin a hard time, but he knows she can take care of herself. She saved him. She obviously cares about him, and yet as soon as he shows up, he treats her like a goddamn teacup, and I don't understand why. She's clearly capable, and yet she's treated so breakably. And that's just a thing with Selena. Selena would never allow herself to be treated like that, and Ayla just kind of puts up with it like it's hilarious, but that's just not the character that I've seen. She could play around with it for a bit, but the fact that it starts to interfere with Aedion and Rowan as like, they're her team, and she's just kind of like, oh men, territorial. No, Selena would say, shut up and let's do this. Get over your shit. And I don't. Rowan was a totally different character. Everything that I loved about him in Heir of Fire was gone, and that was so frustrating because it led to a relationship that didn't make sense to me, because I feel like her feelings for Rowan also came out of nowhere. She was just sort of like, yeah, he's my best friend, I really care about him. And then she was like, and I love him. Just suddenly. I know that you know, I haven't mentioned it before, but I'm in love with him. Yep, this makes sense. But yeah, seriously, Rowan's weird territorial pissing match thing was such bullshit. I'm so angry about all of the territorial nonsense that went on between him and Aedion. Let's just talk about Aedion. Speaking of weird territorial bullshit. So I loved Aedion in Heir of Fire, and I thought that the build-up to a possible relationship between him and Aelin was really, really great. I thought he had so much going for him in Heir of Fire. And I feel like he showed up in Queen of Shadows, and in Heir of Fire he had all of this belief that Aelin was really capable, and he was going to be like her right hand, but he knew she was going to be capable of ruling. And I feel like he showed up in Queen of Shadows. She saved his ass. He's dying, and he's still like, must protect innocent little child girl. But that's not who she is, and it's his first experience of her in like 10 years is that she is not a little girl who needs to be saved. She is a woman, she is a queen, she saved him, and he still fights with Rowan over who gets to protect her when the person who protects Aelin is Aelin. And it especially makes no sense that he acts this way when it's so clear that it's established that they have this relationship where they really know and understand one another. They really get each other, and they tell each other everything about the way they've grown up, and yet, once she's in danger, then he completely disregards the fact that he really knows her and treats her like a child again. And that's just not the Aedion that I saw in Heir of Fire, and it was so annoying because I feel like I didn't like Rowan or Aedion in this book, and Chaol was just consistently pushed to the side when he's clearly the more developed of the characters, and his development made sense up until some of this book. And beyond that posturing, pissing match that happened between Rowan and Aedion, all of a sudden it vanishes without warning. Like, I feel like there wasn't a build-up to them being like brothers. It just went from get the hell away from her to, never mind, we're bros in arms now, it's all okay. There was just no build up to that, which didn't make any sense. Alright, let's talk about a little bit of good. Lissandra. So, when I read The Assassin's Blade and Lissandra was there, I don't know, I was really hoping that that more characters would appear from Assassin's Blade in this book, and they did. That's really true. I was really glad that all of these characters made the transition in, and I actually loved Lissandra. I was so grateful after all of the male nonsense that was happening for there to be a female friendship. Those were the most interesting chapters to me besides Manon, like the witch chapters. Those are really interesting. But Aelin and Lissandra were really it to me. That was the motivating factor in this book that kept me reading, because their relationship was so much better and so much less ridiculous than all of the men's relationships with Aelin. And hey, if we're suggesting ships, I have a beautiful idea. Aelin dumps all of the men and all of their whatever's going on over there, and she and Lissandra just go and hook up, and they're both queens, and it's amazing. If I had my way, that would be the way. So the last character to talk about is, of course, Manon, which I really liked Manon's chapters, but I also had a lot of issues with her as a character. I mean, it made sense, and that was kind of something that was established in Heir of Fire, that she was really obedient to her grandmother to a fault. But it was still really frustrating to watch the fact that there were witches that she'd known for years, for like hundreds of years, and still nothing. She just didn't trust them at all. And it was so weird, because I know she trusts her grandmother, but I mean, these are witches that she's known for so long, and she just completely disregards them despite the fact that they have all of her trust. That was a little annoying, but it was actually a character development thing that I understood finally in this book. I actually got it. My one problem with Manon was, of course, the beginnings of the relationship between her and Dorian, because again, it was this out-of-nowhere relationship where I feel like Sarah J. Maas was like, okay, I have a male character, and he's lonely. He doesn't have a lady. And I have Manon. She doesn't have a man. So even though they've never met, really, and it doesn't make a lot of sense, they're going to be the new thing. they've never met, they've never spoken, they've never had, like, any interactions. The only thing is that Manon momentarily brought Dorian out of his, like, possession state, but that's not a good enough reason. Manon knows a lot of people in her life. Why is it just this random person out of nowhere because Sarah has two main characters that don't have relationships, so obviously they should go together? Honestly, with Manon, I'm excited for her and Aelin to fight side by side. I think that would be really great. I know that right now they're on opposing sides, but in a beautiful future, I could see them fighting side by side and it'd be great. And side note, person who actually should get with Manon is Asterin. Let's be real. Hopes for future books. Really, my hopes are that either all of the male characters will stop being annoying, or Aelin can just leave all of them behind, and then Alid, Manon, and the 13, and Lissandra, they will all team up and form a wonderful female fighting group, and they'll take care of it all on their own, while the men are still in a corner going, no, I'm better, no, I'm stronger. That would be great. That's like, if I could create a dream future, that would be it. I had so many issues with this book, unfortunately. I think that the middle was a little weak. This book definitely, though, had a very strong ending, and for a while it changed my mind about how I thought about the book, because the ending was just so explosive and so good, and I loved all the way the characters were used, but I feel like it didn't equal out. I feel like it didn't balance out the things that I didn't like. And while I love that Chaol is Dorian's, like, weakness, nothing else can break Dorian out of his state except for hearing things about Chaol. And Chaol's the reason he was sort of trapped in the first place. Love to see that relationship again since it was kind of ignored, and I feel like they're going to be separated again. Anyway, the end of this book where you sort of got to see Selena, Chaol, and Dorian together again was so strong because those are the characters that I like. That's the trio that I really enjoy. So I really hope that in future books things turn around, things are a little bit better, because I wish I'd liked this more and I just didn't. I wound up giving this book like a generous 3.25 maybe. I had so many issues. It's definitely my least favorite of the series, so. Alright, I know that a lot of people did not hate this book, and I didn't hate it, I just had a lot of issues with it, but let me know some of your thoughts about this stuff down in the comments, and we can kind of talk it out. I know that I was a bit strong with my feelings, but if you guys want to try to explain a bit more why you liked it or why you disliked it, I welcome that. I'd love to talk more about it with you. But thank you for watching this very long sort of rambling discussion / rant, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye!